of the sensation that the human being is not someone who stands apart from nature and looks at it from an entirely outside position. The human being has himself the feeling of belonging right in nature.
It's July 1845. A young man by the name of Henry David Thoreau sets himself an experiment. How long could a person live by themselves in a cabin in the woods? What would they learn from living a simple existence next to the peaceful solitude of a pond, with nobody to tell you what to do or how to act, confronting the quintessential facts of life by spending the days journaling, reading, walking, and simply observing the beauty of the natural world? For 2 years and 2 months Thoreau did this, motivated by an urge to escape the noise and busyness of a rapidly changing society, which also culminated in one of the most famous pieces of American literature ever written, the story of Walden, A Life in the Woods. What's interesting is that the story of great thinkers venturing out into the natural world is one that dates back centuries before Walden. Many cultures, religions, and philosophers throughout history have all gained vast amounts of knowledge from their interactions with nature, from a monk meditating by the side of a mountain, contemplating the constantly changing order of things, to the ancient Japanese practice of forest bathing. There is an overlap of ideas on the mysterious and beautiful relationship that exists between humankind and nature. Naturally, no pun intended, this got me thinking, what is the connection between these different schools of thought? How can two different cultures, situated in opposite ends of the globe, talk of the same thing, yet never have once common contact with each other? I'm curious to know whether the story of one man's experience in the woods is a fundamental insight into the most beautiful thing we have on planet Earth. Whether there is anything that we as human beings can learn about our fascinating relationship with nature.
You gotta get back out in the world. You should make a radical change in your lifestyle. Get out of that lonely house, that little workshop of yours. Get back out on the road. I mean, the core of man's spirit comes from new experiences.
Sometimes, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I like to go watch the sunrise over the ocean. It's here that I'm reminded of the ancient Stoic phenomenon known as sympathia, sometimes referred to as the oceanic feeling, or the plot of a movie known as Into the Wild. The ancient Stoics held the belief that human beings are an insurmountably small dot in the enormity of the universe. They believed by looking out into the beauty and grand scale of the cosmos, one experiences a feeling of humility, calm, and connection to the natural world. The experience is described like a wave washing over your ego and whispering into your ear to just sit still and look. And the Stoics thought that this experience was something that all people needed to actively seek. Many thinkers, artists, and writers all venture out into the wilderness for inspiration and nourishment. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most famous Stoic of all time, wrote in his book Meditations that any form of nature always outrivals art, because every piece of art is no more than an imitation of the natural. The way that we view the world is also stitched to the way that we see ourselves, but by going out and experiencing sympathia, we gain something that's easily forgotten. The perspective that we as human beings are only really small flickers of paint on the large canvas of the universe, and that the natural world is in itself the truest form of art. One might drive through the Australian desert in an air-conditioned car, with remnants of KFC in the back seat, and gaze out into the outback, thinking what a vast and uninviting place this is. But for an Indigenous Australian in that country, they might see a land rich of food, water, and medicine, of animals, tools, and spirit. Why is this? The traditional custodians of Australia are the oldest living continuous culture on planet Earth, and they have one of the deepest and most profound connections to nature. Spanning back some 65,000 years, they have a symbiotic connection to country, being able to coexist with some of the harshest environments on planet Earth.
You know, the land grows all of us up, and it really does. You know, no human is older than the land itself. It just isn't. And no living marsupial is as old as the land itself.
So I went out there, and day after day, week after week, there's a magical effect that the landscape has and that the people, the Aboriginal people, have. And I was...
Instead of viewing our environment as something to be divvied up and portioned off by white picket fences, many Indigenous Australians view country as much more than just a place. Everything in nature was formed by the same substance of the ancestors, who continue to live in the land, water, and sky. Unfortunately, like in many other parts of the world, much of Australia's Indigenous culture has been eroded and destroyed to European colonisation. It's easy to forget that while Australia is split up into 6 states and 2 territories, there are approximately 500 Indigenous nations and clans across the country, each with their own unique cultural practices and languages. It is more important than ever that we cherish and protect what is left of our Indigenous cultures. I was deeply fascinated after talking to one of these clans here at Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast. After having a chat to the people at the Jericho Cultural Centre, they told me about their tribe's sustainable connection to country, how they would only ever fish for the exact number of fish that their people needed. The idea of hoarding and storing food in fridges meant that the natural ecosystem was disrupted, resulting in fish populations dying out. The idea that nature is something to be learned from and respected to is something we aren't familiar with today.
It's cold!
I'm a firm believer that there is a lot that we can learn as a nation by listening to the voices of our First Nations people. They are truly one of the most extraordinary cultures on planet Earth.
Bend, hill.
Your mind is like this water, my friend. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if you allow it to settle, the answer becomes clear.
Wu Wei, in the Chinese tradition of Taoism, translates to non-doing. Now, this doesn't mean to be lazy and not do anything, but rather to live in accordance with nature's laws, just like this guy's doing. Take, for example, a river. Instead of trying to swim against its current, holding onto a stern, rigid adherence to doing things in a particular way, one should let themselves swim with the flow of the water, adjusting themselves to the experiences of life, just like a plant adjusts itself to the shape of a tree, as we too are living organisms making our way through the natural world.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
This connection to nature has sort of been described like being drunk. It's where your anxiety fades and you learn to just go with the flow. It's fascinating how the self-help of ancient China was simply learnt from observing the flow of a river. How respecting the environment also translates to observing and following its many laws, learning to live in harmony with the natural cycle of things, which in turn benefits yourself. This ultimately begs the question, what did Henry David Thoreau uncover through his time in the woods? Although some evidence now indicates that Thoreau was really just the 18th century version of I'm deleting all my socials and living off the grid for a few months, I think his case is a snapshot of something integral to the human race.
Beautiful things don't ask for attention.
After looking at the immensity of God's universe, man seems just too small and insignificant for God to care anything about.
The perspective and wisdom gained from immersing oneself in nature and understanding our deeply connected relationship to it is a unifying glue in the whole history of humankind, transcending culture, religion, and time. There is even science behind this. Time spent in nature has shown a lower blood pressure, reduce stress, enhance the immune system, and improve overall mental well-being. Nature has a mysterious communication with our inner feelings. The pure mystery, ecstasy, and calm achieved through walking through a forest or swimming out in the ocean is a testament to its perplexing power and unknown origins. It's something that unites science, art, spirituality, poetry, and philosophy. The fundamental point here is that nature can exist without man, But human beings can't exist without nature. It provides us with the very essence of survival. If only we could learn this today.
I witnessed the natural world at its most fascinating and vibrant. But I've also witnessed startling changes that are today threatening our very civilizations.
On course for devastating changes to our climate.
For the entire planet, it is a disaster. It confirms that July 2023 is set to be the hottest month ever recorded in human history.
Let us be honest as Republicans say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax.
All this, and is there climate change? Yeah. Will it go back like this? I mean, will it change back? Probably. That's what I think.
Thousands of school students have staged protests around the country demanding greater political action on climate change.
Wake up, people. The time is now. Do you really need a 10-year-old to show you how?
Deforestation and defaunation to pollution and climate change. No shocking graph nor depressing slideshow can fully convey the totality of our destruction.
Scientists warn today that climate change is warming the planet to the point where it's causing irreversible damage in some parts of the world.
The new report from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC.
One must ask themselves, where do we draw the line? But not all hope is lost.
Scientists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. For we meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. William Bradford, speaking in 1630, said that all great and honorable actions are accompanied with great difficulties, and both must be enterprised and overcome with answerable courage. Why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The overview effect is a sensation felt among astronauts when viewing the Earth from a distance for the first time. Many reported to have felt an overwhelming sensation of euphoria and have gone on to experience significant cognitive shifts, re-evaluating their place in life, realizing that everything in the universe is somehow interconnected.
The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves.
It's one of those sensations that a select few humans will ever get to experience, and we can only imagine what it might feel like. Like the pond that Thoreau lived by for 2 years, maybe the Earth is just a mere pond in the enormity of the universe. As human beings, we tend to separate nature from ourselves, but in actuality, we're as much part of nature as anything else. We are born out of this earth and we will turn to dust, only to be put back into the ground. That small speck of light on the black canvas of the universe is the only world known to be able to sustain us, and like so many have before, it's our responsibility to take care of it.
Hello.